Hello, everyone. This is Super Puzzle Developments. This is our first stream on the channel here, and I'm going to do a walkthrough of what the channel is all about and what we're going to be doing in upcoming streams in the coming weeks. So thank you for being here. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. This is going to be a fun stream. We're getting started a little bit late, and I'm looking forward to how this is going to turn out. So I guess I should start off with a little bit of a story. So the name of this initiative here, the name of the channel is Supercivilization, and my name is Joshua Seymour. And on behalf of a larger group and body of people, I'm initiating this channel and some of the other components that I'm going to walk through today, and basically spearheading it. And we have focus groups and working groups behind the scenes, which I'll speak about a little bit more here in just a moment. And hopefully you guys can hear me and see me okay. Maybe just let me know in the chat. I'm not sure because it's first time doing it, but assuming that things are going well, um, I'm excited for everything that I'm going to share with you today. And I will break down the concept of super puzzle developments today. Today we're going to be looking at things overall. But normally, if you join us on Sunday, because we will be having other streams, you'll be joining us for this amazing creative process of what we call conceiving the super puzzle and then putting together the pieces and beholding the puzzle picture ultimately of an entirely new world that we've never experienced here on Earth. And that's what we're referring to as the super civilization. And the super civilization, in terms of the brand and the project here, is a force for the real life super civilization that's emerging. So I'm going to break that down for you in just a moment. And if enough of us work together, we can get the jobs done that are going to relieve the pains of the current situation and create the gains of a more desirable situation. And we will normally on Sundays be focusing on the super puzzle as a whole. So I will take you in and do some screen sharing here to kind of break stuff down. And you can let me know what you think. And there's more going on than just this channel and just this live stream here on Sundays. So follow along and I'll break it all down. So there is a website that's in progress. It's pretty messy at the moment. Right now you're looking at the home page. The website is www.supercivilization.xyz, supercivilization.xyz, and there's some stuff on here that I'm going to walk through, but if you were to go there, like it's still a mess. It's not optimized for tablet or phone or anything like that. So what you see right now is the beginning of a homepage, and probably it'll be different here in a bit. But basically, can we become more humane? Can we become super humane, and can we become super civilized? And if that's something that you want, like if you consider yourself, you're already a self leader, you're already what some of us might call an integrated thinker, you're a value creator, and you're somebody who is kind of disenfranchised with the status quo of the world that we live in. And there's other terminology and stuff, but basically, you want to go as far as you can in this lifetime yourself individually, and what we can do together collectively. And so I want to break down some of the things that I think the super civilization is going to help us do. So the subtext here under this headline, and a lot of this stuff maybe won't make it in final versions, but basically the super civilization helps you supremely enhance your individual quality of life and superiorly advance our collective standard of living, so we can each and all enjoy the most extraordinary experiences of wealth, health, and peace that are available to us today. And then I've got a few main components here, almost like a formula that we're working on for different aspects of the super civilization. And I've got these progress bars, which sort of symbolize, if we can really do a good job with the first one, we're 33% of the way there to having a super civilization. If we can also do a good job with the second one in combination with the first one, we'll be 66% there. And then if we can have the breakthroughs on the third component here, we would, pretty much almost be all the way there. And I'll break that down. So the first section here, you might not be able to read this very well, so I'll just read it for you. It says, free yourself and loved ones. And then it says, free others and all of society here in the middle, and cure human aging and death. This is sort of a baseline breakthrough. It's not the only thing that we're focused on in this part, as you'll see here in a moment, but it is something that a lot of people can agree on that we do need to accomplish, and it's sort of like a baseline milestone. So I'll read the text here and we can break it down a little bit. So under free yourself and loved ones, it says, free yourself and loved ones from the stops and what's holding you back by removing the obstacles to being the person you're meant to be, living the life you're meant to live. And at the end of the day, the way we kind of look at this is it's basically human development, and we want to make superhuman enhancements with a particular context of how we're defining superhuman. We want to make these superhuman enhancements available to everybody, to the children, to the youth, to adults, different ages and stages of life and development. In the middle, we have free others and all of society. So the first part is kind of working with people at the individual level and supporting individual human development. The second part is, well, what do we need to function effectively, collectively as a society, particularly as a super society? And we'll come back and unpack some of these. So here we have free others and all of society, free others and all of society from political and psychological subjugation. These are some of the main things holding us back and holding back the value creators and geniuses of society, such as yourself, perhaps, by ending the rule of man so we can launch the universal wealth, health, and peace of mankind. So basically, there's really just a few bad people holding back progress. And if we can free ourselves and our businesses, and the progress of ventures that we're working on from the people that would otherwise kind of keep a lid on things, then we will have a very rapidly advancing super society. And then on the third component here, cure human aging and death, that can be done by overcoming the biological survival state so that we can generate more energy than we're consuming. And then we would be able to enjoy very long lives, possibly, maybe most likely immortality to some degree within our lifetimes. And I'm going to come back and talk about that. There are, of course, other breakthroughs that we do need, and I'll explain all of that. But these are some little teasers of some of the main components of the super civilization and of the super puzzle. And then at the end of the day, we're basically looking for people to get involved. There's nothing to buy right now. We're going to create a free membership dynamic. I don't think it's fully created at the time of me streaming this live, but it will be there soon. So pay attention and look for that to be available. But basically, if you want to come in and build the different components that I'm going to walk through and talk about here and get involved with like-minded people, then you would have the opportunity to do that. So for example, after this live stream, I'm going to be going to a 2-hour Zoom meeting with like-minded people where we will be working on different components of the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So this is not the official homepage, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. And to kind of kick us off, I want to go to the About page, which again is still a work in progress. And I'm going to talk you and walk you through it. There are some good headlines and visuals here. And we'll be finishing up the content throughout this month and just get everything dialed in. We might even launch a mobile app, especially in regards to that free membership dynamic. So the headline here says, disconnect from the degens to fully connect with the regens. And if you don't know what that means, I'll break it down for you in just a moment. The super civilization, as I said, helps you supremely enhance your individual quality of lifestyle as well as superiorly advance our collective standards of living so we can all enjoy the most extraordinary dimension of wealth, health, and peace, something that's never been available to you or to anyone on earth. And basic premise here is that you can become a superhuman while building the super society. And if you're really tapped in, tuned in, turned on, that is the game that we are playing here. And so I want to help frame the narrative and the storyline. If I'm looking at the world today, a lot of stuff is not really being accurately contextualized for us. Um, People are aware of some kind of an awakening. People are aware of different kinds of conspiracies, and there's different visions of the future, including the ruling elite class has a particular vision of the future that may not be the vision that you really want for yourself and your loved ones and your fellow humans, the rest of us. So how do we recontextualize that narrative? And I have a few key concepts here that I want to share with you that I think are instrumental in recontextualizing things. And these key concepts are what a lot of the basis of the channel is going to be, especially the Sunday streams and related content to what I'm calling the super puzzle, which is a major component of the super civilization. So the heading here says, one super puzzle, two movements, and three conditions. And then basically what you see here are what I refer to as the XYZ coordinates. So as long as you know these three basic concepts and you use them together, then you can recontextualize anything that you're looking at in the world and have a more fully integrated and honest way of looking at it, especially in the long tail of where things are going, which can, of course, make it easier for you to make good decisions in various ways and be more at peace. So the first concept is what I call the Godman Awakening, or what I've known to learn to refer to as the Godman Awakening. So a lot of people talk about different kinds of awakenings, like the Great Awakening, or there's a lot of people like to use the expression being woke, and some people have different connotations of what those things mean. The idea of an awakening is not really new, but what specifically is the awakening? And what are we really supposed to be doing as we are awakening? What is the job to be done? So I'm going to break that down for you. And the mother of all conspiracies is that there is something that is an anti-civilization, and so we're going to break that down as well. Um, and there are two fundamental movements to relieve the pains of this anti-civilization. And then the third component here is that the anti-civilization is not our future. Our future is the super civilization. And there are some key conditions that we have to create to have a super civilization, for that to truly be the future that we can have today rather than tomorrow. And arguably, the awakening is something that can't be stopped. And the reason why we live in an anti-civilization is actually because of the kind of mentality that we've had in the past, where people were stuck in a following mode and they relied on external guidance versus internal guidance. So let's go ahead and break this down a little bit. So at the end of the day, the awakening is really about one worldwide drive to get the job done. And what is that job? We can talk about it. And basically the God-Man Awakening, and you can see the innocent child here. The God-Man Awakening is going from degens to regens. So by the time we get about this age of this little girl here that you see on the screen, our brain makes the calculation that we're storing more memory than we're processing, and that we're basically building a backlog, and that we're going to die. So the brain, for survival purposes, makes the decision to put us in low power mode, and then we kind of turn off a lot of our senses and abilities in many cases, and life becomes much duller by the time you reach a certain age as a child, when your brain figures out what's going on here. and wants to basically, like your phone, put you in low power mode to conserve as much battery as possible from a survival state perspective. And the reason why we're in that survival state is because we're consuming more energy than we're generating. And that's basically the true definition of being a degen. And so if we could overcome the survival state, we would become regens, and we would actually generate more than we're consuming. So the reason why we're depleted as degens and that we're in the survival state is primarily because we rely on external authorities to guide us. And that keeps us trapped in like a spiral of death situation, with spiral of death stimulations, as many of us have come to know them. And that's basically being a degen in terms of like, being a degenerate gambler, making getting involved in debauchery type of situations, and just not really valuing yourself, and maybe not also human life. And if people get into positions of power with this survival state mentality, it can be very dangerous, as we've seen, and I'll come back to that. But instead, we can work toward becoming energized regens, and we can be thriving, each of us individually, with reliance on our own internal guidance. We can be self-leaders, and we can think for ourselves. We don't really need other people to tell us how to live and how to spend our money and how to run our businesses and all that kind of stuff. But historically, most people have really needed that for survival, or they've just been kind of stuck in that following mode. So this is what the awakening, this is a very simple way of explaining specifically what the awakening is. It's a change of our mentality from being reliant on external guidance to being reliant on our own internal guidance, our own internal authority. And because of the mentality of the past, we have been living in an anti-civilization, and that's the mother of all conspiracies. And it's basically a world of bad leaders at the end of the day. And the anti-civilization is composed of cold-hearted value usurpers and evil-minded value destroyers. Those are like the two groups of people that really, aside from the following mode of people that for whatever reason they buy into the illusions of these people, or they're afraid, so they listen to them or whatever. It's really the individual following mode mentality of most people, of the masses, that allows these people to exist. But these are the people that really do the work, and they are value usurpers and value destroyers. These are the bad people, basically, of the anti-civilization. So there's two main movements that can relieve the pains of the anti-civilization. And that's a big part of what the super civilization is all about. Those two main movements are basically improving yourself for the better, enough people, critical mass number of people, and improving society for the better. And in the future, I'll put together a lot of presentations and additional content. Obviously, the website will be full of content and videos and stuff that will very clearly demonstrate a lot of the things that I'm expressing here for you. I'm just giving you some intro to the idea of like, what is the super civilization? And in antithesis to, somebody like this and these people with really scowly, unhappy faces and stuff, hating life, we've got two beautiful young children, and we also have two happy adults. So in contrast to the anti-civilization, the super civilization future is a world of self-leaders rather than a world of bad leaders. And it's run by high-minded value producers and great-hearted value creators. Value producers are the people that are improving existing values and going further with them, and value creators are the ones who are creating the new things, or maybe a combination. You could be doing a combination of this. But there's three conditions that we have to establish in order to create all the gains that are possible in the super civilization, again, in contrast to the pains. So the job is really an escape from the anti-civilization and an arrival to the super civilization. And this is already happening regardless of me or this initiative, or maybe even stuff that you're doing. Uh, and arguably, this awakening cannot be stopped because the anti-civilization is collapsing, and the survival pressures of it are causing more people to awaken. They're kind of popping like popcorn kernels, as I like to say. And then there's no there the new mentality that's emerging, the regens, the self leaders, they are giving rise to a new civilization, which is the super civilization. And so there's less people with a mentality that's supporting the anti-civilization. So it keeps collapsing, which keeps creating survival pressures for more people to wake up, which then strengthens the super civilization. So it's sort of like a virtuous cycle here in favor of humanity. It's like a domino effect that really at this point can't be stopped. It's just a matter of how are you going to weather the storm and how long is it going to take to complete this evolution. Um, and on this about page, I'm probably going to add some other stuff that you don't see here yet related to kind of more on the back end or the business side of this project, like where are we at and what can we do to strengthen problem solution fit and product market fit and business model fit and those kind of things. But I don't have any visuals here on the page to show you. And if this is stuff that interests you, then hang around and follow along and stay in touch so that you can know how to get more involved. Again, there's nothing to buy at this moment because we basically need to work together to create the things that people might buy, which I'll break down in a moment. So there's just a free membership and like a little bit of a community and regular working meetings and stuff like that, including a working meeting right after this. So that's a little bit of the storyline here, and I think that kind of helps make some sense. A lot of these ideas, by the way, and the inspiration for this project and sponsoring it, and this project is part of as I said, a much larger body of people. A lot of it has to do with the ideas of this man right here, Mr. Mark Hamilton, who's had a huge impact on my life personally. I'll talk about that on my own, personal YouTube channel and social media outlets and stuff like that if you want to get more of my own story here. But I would recommend going to Mark Hamilton's channel, and I'll make sure I include the links with this. And right on the homepage of the channel, there are some playlists, some longer form stuff like a podcast with his eldest son, and maybe a little clip here with his youngest son. And then he has meetings with some of his members. I'm one of these members. Some recent talks that he's given, and a lot of the ideas that you would see on his channel. This is the inspiration for the super civilization. So make sure you check out Mark Hamilton and follow him on some of these other social media channels. I would recommend looking at his recent podcasts and speeches that he's given in private meetings, the longer form content to really get the full idea of the different ideas here. But if you were to listen to those talks and then come look at this website, like the about page, you'd get a better understanding of some of this stuff, a deeper understanding, I guess I would say. So a lot of you, I think, can grasp the concept here. But if you're curious, explore Mark Hamilton, because he's a major founding element of what we're doing here, and behind the scenes he's aware of and involved in all of this, and this is very much in support of where he's directing things with the idea of a parallel society that becomes a network state, which is something that I want to chat about you with. And while I'm on YouTube here, I should mention that the Super Civilization channel, we're going to be streaming live 4 days a week, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have a different theme and focus each day of the week. And then we'll take clips, and also a lot of the audios will go into the podcast section as well. And right now everything is like pretty rough. So we'll have to just improve things as we move along. Thanks for being here on the journey. And then also on my personal channel, and I'll include these links for you, but on my personal channel, I'll be creating short videos, giving some of my own personal perspective on some of these things. On in particular for the super civilization, it'll be on like Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and maybe a little bit on Saturday. We'll have to see. So if you want more than what's available on this channel and the related social media stuff, as we get going here, you can go to my personal channel and you'll get additional backstory and a little bit more individual perspective on what we're doing here. So now I would like to take you to the pages on the website that we haven't looked at yet. So we looked at the basic concept, which is going to be presented on the home page. We looked at the about page and these XYZ coordinates that give you a way of looking at the world and recontextualizing it. Again, the Godman Awakening, the Anti-Civilization Conspiracy, and the Supercivilization Future. So if I was looking at anything in the world, I could remember these three concepts and use them together, and I could have a more complete puzzle picture of where we are and where we're going and what needs to happen next. So some other pages on the site here that I'm going to take you through. One of them is a page called Superachievers. And then we have some of the main components of the super civilization. We have super puzzle at the top here, superhuman, super society, and super genius. So are basically going to be the main pages of the website. I think the super achievers page is going to end up being kind of like a sales letter for the free membership dynamic, and it will tie things together. And I think what I'll do, let's see here. Let's take a look at the let's take a look at the super achiever page quickly here. We might have to come back to it. So I've got these 9 dimensions of super achiever ascension here on the page. And the visual here is the visual that we're using for the super civilization. And there's a lot of meaning to it. And it actually corresponds to the 9 DNA vibratory groups of human development, the development of human consciousness. You could even say things like levels of consciousness. And people have used expressions out there in the world over the years, especially regarding the awakening. They've talked about things like the 5th dimension and things like that. So there's different ways of looking at dimensions of human development that correspond to reality. And so one model that's very common, and this is stuff we'll cover in future live streams and videos and content and stuff. There's these different models and stuff like that, but nine dimensions of development is a common model, and we are breaking it down by some of the different components: the superhuman dimensions of development, the super society dimensions, and what we call the super genius dimensions of development. And so basically this is sort of your individual journey as a super achiever, and that's one of the ways that we're going to frame things for you to really mirror what's going on in real life. And so I'll come back to this here in a bit, but before we do, let's kind of break down the other components. So there's your individual journey as a super achiever. Again, going back to those 2 fundamental movements, you have to continue wherever you're at, beginner, intermediate, advanced. You have to continue to develop as a individual, as a super achiever, whose future is going to be living in a super civilization that's emerging. And then also, that's not enough for you to just develop individually. You also have to work together with other super achievers to solve the super puzzle. So now I'm going to jump over to the super puzzle page and show you a couple of things. And we're also going to talk about some stuff that's not on this website to help pull it all together. So here, again, you'll notice here we are in the meeting that we're having right now, this live stream. And then there will be another live stream next Sunday, and that's what the countdown is for. And if you click the button, it will take you to the YouTube channel. There will be a video here that breaks things down. And then I've got some progress bars here for the different parts of the super puzzle, which we're going to now talk about. So here we have conceiving the super puzzle. And basically, this is where the super civilization begins. This is part 1. And there's progress that we need to make to complete part 1 to get to 100% of it. And then we have putting together the pieces, which is part 2. And this is going to be a most of what our experience will be together until we make significant progress and eventually 100%. And this is where the super civilization is going to unify. And then we have part 3, beholding the puzzle picture. And this is where we will be thriving. And this there's a logical progression here. So the intention of the super puzzle is to launch your individual and collective wealth, health, and peace on Earth, and we've got these different components here, which I'm going to walk you through. So in the first component, joining us in conceiving the super puzzle, which is where we're at right now, we're really tying this together with the number of super achievers that are involved. And we haven't officially opened things up yet, but there are people involved behind the scenes that are helping put all this together. It's not just me. And it's not just Mark Hamilton. There are others involved. And if we were to make things official right now, there are more than 10 of us who are really championing the super civilization and moving forward on the super puzzle, but there maybe is not 100 of us. So in terms of the growth of what we're in and what we need to really get this thing going, we're basically more than 10 but less than 100. And so I've got these locks on here to kind of symbolize our, this one is unlocked, and our next milestone is to unlock 100. And then after that, we can work toward more than 1,000. And the super civilization would really begin at more than 1,000 super achievers. We would officially unlock completely part one of the super puzzle. So before I continue on here, I want to, there's another thing that's not visualized here yet, but it will be as we get more of the content, and this will probably be a video here explaining what part one is all about. If you understand that what we're creating here as a membership organization is a parallel society, a super civilization in parallel to an anti-civilization, then we have to increase certain numbers, and we have to go through the stages of development of that parallel society. And this is a really big core part of what the super puzzle is all about. So in order to really understand where we're going, I want to draw your attention to something called the network state, which is at thenetworkstate.com. There's a book here and some other things. There's audio versions and stuff. So I'm on the page right now, and right at the top, there's this quick start guide, which really helps you understand what the network state is all about. Some of you might already be familiar with it. And I want to draw your attention to the network state in one sentence, one image, 1,000 words, and one essay. And for time purposes here, we're just going to look at the one sentence and the one image. So the one sentence is there's a short version of it and a longer form version of it. And the short version says a network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states. And this is basically, this definition encapsulates the stages of development of a parallel society, which are defined in this book, The Network State. So you start basically as a startup society, which is a highly aligned online community. And then you grow that into what's called a network union, which means your highly aligned online community has a capacity for collective action. And once you have achieved network union status, which is a global digital network that's capable of achieving something together, then you can scale that into a network archipelago, where you're then crowdfunding physical local territory around the world. And if you have a large enough network archipelago, you can eventually gain diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states, and then you would actually have network state status, and then you could strengthen that network state status. And so the way that we're looking at the super puzzle right now is pretty much tied in with going through these stages of development. So in terms of the metrics, that to know like how big is this thing becoming, how would you eventually know if you're ready for network state status, what are the numbers you really want to increase? If we're looking at this visual here, it's sort of like a scoreboard. As we are able to build a network archipelago spread around the world, these local nodes, we would need a large enough population and enough economic activity in various forms and a large enough real estate footprint to for people to take us seriously and to be able to negotiate with us. And so there is sort of a critical mass number of things, and it could sort of correlate with if we were to look at the bell curve of tech adoption. And these are things that we will go over in the future as well. Let me just see if I can find something simple. I want to get a little bit of a bigger version of it here for you if I can. Might be a little bit blurry, but basically there's stages of development where people adopt things. So there's many people innovating the super civilization, whether they frame it this way or not. They are. They have this new mentality and they're creating the new structures. And there's people that are early adopters of those things that they're creating. And then some of those things that are being created have crossed the chasm and they're already in the early majority, such as let's say things like cryptocurrency and maybe also some of the early stage AI stuff. And they're basically breaking out of just the early market into the mainstream market. And then of course there's so many more things emerging in the early market. But as we increase the numbers, we start to capture more of the market and we get to the point where we start to become a force to reckon with. We become very dominant. And even the conservatives and the late majority and the skeptics that are the laggards, even they cannot ignore us. Um, Okay, so back to the network state. So these are important numbers: the population, the prosperity among them, and also the properties that we have. That's kind of how I summarize it: population, prosperity, and properties. These are some really big numbers to focus on. And so coming back to the super puzzle, the first part is basically being that startup society, that highly aligned online community, and then progressing it into a network union that has a capacity for collective action. So that's really what phase one is all about. So we need a large enough number of people in order for this thing to really be rocking and rolling. And it can't just be an online community. They have to have a capacity for collective action. And so this is what we're working toward. And once we've got this much of an online community, 1,000 or more super achievers, and we demonstratively have that capacity for collective action. And right now, what we're really doing is conceiving the super puzzle. That's what we're really working toward at the moment. Then at this point, we will unlock part one completely, which has additional storyline attached to it that would I'm not going to get into it today. We'll talk about it in future Sundays. And after that, we can then move on in the game because it's a collective game here. We could then move on into part two, which is the actions of putting together the pieces. So once we're capable of collective action, then we need to actually become the strongest network union that we can become while also starting to build a network archipelago. And so we would go from 1,000 to 10,000 and unlock additional superpowers. We would go from 10,000 to 1,000 super achievers working together globally and locally. Not just globally, but there's a lot of global digital infrastructure that we need, which I'll come back to. And then there's also a lot of local physical infrastructure that we need. And we have to, in order to increase the prosperity and crowdfunding and also crowdsourcing efforts, we're going to need a large numbers of people. So as we progress through these numbers, we will become a network archipelago, and we will eventually start to hit numbers that are kind of similar to what I was just showing you, where we can have 1 million or more people that are really unified globally and locally in our efforts to do the different things that we need to do, which I'm going to talk about here in a moment. And so once we reach 1 million or more people, we would probably be have a very stable network archipelago, and we could consider ourselves having unlocked part two of the super puzzle. And there are other things tied to this, as I said. You'll get the idea here in a moment. And then finally, we would be able to move into the final part here, which would allow us to behold the puzzle picture. And this is where we would go from a network archipelago into finally becoming a network state, and then becoming the strongest network state that we can become. Again, going back to the definition here, a network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states, maybe also other network states as these things emerge, as a characteristic of the super civilization. Not just this project, but the real life thing that a lot of people are a part of, even if they can't fully articulate it the way we are here today. And so we do need a certain size population and prosperity and properties. So this is where we would really scale that population from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million, and maybe even to 1 billion eventually here. And we would have to also distribute this population locally across the world. We would probably be building different sized lands and towns and cities and those kinds of things. And we would be fully in the swing of that at this point. So this is where we are really starting to thrive. And if we can reach 1 billion as our population gets close to 10 billion on Earth, 10 billion humans, then we would be 10, we would make up 10% of the total, let's say the total addressable market. And at that point, I think we would be looking at moving toward 100%, and not just being a parallel society anymore, but becoming the dominant parallel society. And then eventually the anti-civilization would just be gone. There would just be nothing left for it. So all the laggards would have to join us. And a lot of those laggards, begrudgingly, might be these kind of people that would initially be ostracized from our parallel society, but eventually they would have to join us. They would either just die in from being ostracized into wastelands and stuff like that. But some of them would decide to no longer be value usurpers and value destroyers. They would decide to become value producers and value creators. So that's basically the idea here. And if you're ready to conceive and believe and achieve the super puzzle, then join us in the Super Civilization. We're going to have a meeting right after this, and there's also meetings related to other components that I'm going to quickly touch on here: Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Sunday is kind of the day that ties it all together. So I think you are a super achiever. You might be more at beginning stages or intermediate, or you could be very advanced. And I appreciate you being here looking at this, but there's a lot of work that we need to do, and there's only so much that we can do on our own. We really have to tap the power of our collaborative value, because 1+1 = 3 when we put bodies and brains together, right? It's an exponential geometric increase in the potential value that we can create. So some of the other components that I have here are superhuman, super society, and super genius. So these go back to what's on the homepage, and these are the things that we need to build in order to have a super civilization and to go further in it. So when it comes to superhuman, what we're really talking about, and there's a live stream coming up tomorrow about this, and every Monday. That's what the countdown is for. What we're really talking about is human development. And so the way I'm articulating it here is that we need something to support the child. And right now we're referring to that as the academy. And when we're saying human development, we mean people becoming superhumans in the super society. We're going to talk about the super society quickly here in just a moment. So what can we do to better support superhuman child development, not just ordinary child development, but we want our children to be extraordinary. And in many cases, they already are extraordinary when they come to us before the anti-civilization basically starts to kind of ruin them and turn them into degens, and they've slipped into a following mode mentality if that's allowed to happen. So how can we support superhuman child development? And we have a, let's say, a focus group or a think tank of people that are passionate about child development, organizing around this idea of a superhuman academy. Now, that doesn't mean that we're initially creating an academy, but this is like a productized name for part of the think tank here, the superhuman think tank. And we have the youth development that we need to consider, and we have a particular way that we're looking at this, which I'll talk about in the live stream on Monday, with different age ranges and stuff. So come and join us there if you want to hear more about this. So supporting superhuman youth development. And then, of course, we also have to support adults. So again, we'll unpack this on the live streams on Monday. And then right after that, we have a 2-hour working meeting related to the superhuman co-op. So if you're interested, come join us there. The free membership would allow you to join any of these things. We're just still putting it together. I don't think it's fully functional yet today. And then on the super society side of things, what we're basically doing is building the super society of superhumans. And we have 3 different ways that we're looking at this, which is basically how can you, in a bigger, better, more positive, stronger way, build your personal super society network. And we envision companies that are mostly built out of personal brands and personal enterprises. And then, I mean, you might expand it, you might replicate yourself. And these are things we can talk about in our live stream and our meetings on Wednesdays. But at the end of the day, it's really the individuals that make up a company. And so we have to be able to support individuals becoming the persons they were meant to be, living the lives they were meant to live, and having that perfect sweet spot of the ikigai, the Japanese Venn diagram, the ikigai concept, where it's a combination of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And you're just in that vortex, in that sweet spot. And so besides you being able to be in that place and know what it is, how are you going to run your company? And as your company expands beyond you as an individual, how are you going to do that? So the super society is basically a giant company, community, country dynamic, made up of personal networks, a global network, and local networks. But then if you want to create a company inside of this new civilization, because obviously it's so horrible creating companies in the anti-civilization for the most part, it's ridiculous at this point. How are you going to do that? So let's pool together all the best efforts that are already creating solutions for us to create better companies. Let's pool all that together and see if we can get a little stronger collaboration going on that and get stuff that's more usable for individuals like ourselves. And then what about developing our global and digital infrastructure of our super society network, which is what our global community is really all about? At the end of the day, the ability to function like that. Are we just going to use Facebook and YouTube and X and these other social media platforms forever? Do they do everything that we want? Or are we going to create our own stuff? And what if you want to create a community within that global community, maybe in relation to what you're doing with your company? Are you going to use Mighty Networks? Or are you going to use a Facebook group? Are you going to use something like that? Or are you going to get a little, are we going to get a little more innovative with what's possible? And what about all the things that are already happening that a lot of people aren't aware of? How can we, strengthen those projects and maybe create more adoption of them in a more collaborative, unified way here? And then finally, developing our local super society networks. It's really the local networks that make up the country element of what we're doing here. That's the archipelago, right? The community is sort of the network union. The country is really the network archipelago. All these local networks that are hooked up to the global network, local and physical networks. So if how are we going to manage all those local networks? And then if you want to run a land or a town or a city that's part of the super civilization, how can you run that? What software and other resources are you going to use to run it? And how's it going to stay hooked up to the entire super society. So if you want to help create these kind of things, or if you're already creating elements of this kind of stuff, you might want to join us and collaborate on Wednesdays. And then finally, we have our Super Genius tab here, which is what we're going to focus in on Fridays. We do have a bias toward curing aging and death as quickly as possible for a lot of reasons, but that's not the only thing that we're focused on. So this is really for the people that are already at the top of their game with improving themselves and improving society. The let's say the advanced superachievers, and the thing that's limiting you at this point is for you to become smarter and to be able to live longer. And so how can we support the super geniuses that are creating new ventures and new growth engines of the super society, creating new structures of our super civilization? How can we support the process of improving ones that are already working right now? So it's sort of like 0 to 1 and then 1 to N, if you're familiar with the startup terminology of super achievers like Peter Thiel and stuff like that. So how can we improve something that's getting ready to become an enterprise, or that already is an enterprise, and make it easier and better for the geniuses to do what they do? And then how can we break into the new industries and the new structures by not only managing, the infinity loop of improving existing stuff and innovating new things, but managing the environmental conditions in such a way where a new industry can emerge. And so on Fridays we'll be unpacking this more and help it all make sense for you as it's all coming together. So if you want to collaborate on that, join us on Fridays. And then again, the super achiever aspect of what we're doing here is to really tie it all together. So how can you make sure that you're really rooted individually as in your own personal development, improving yourself for the better, the superhuman dimensions, and vivifying yourself with superhuman enhancements, and also maybe playing your role in helping with these different components that I was alluding to a little bit. And then how can you make sure you have your foundation in the super society dimensions of ascension, where you're playing your role in unifying society with super society advancements. And so whatever kind of company, community, country dynamic you want to be a part of, the super society is supporting that, and you're actually playing your role in doing it. And if you want to help create these components as part of the super puzzle, you could do that. And then as you kind of push yourself into the more advanced stages of development, you would be able to really get your foundation in the super society dimensions of ascension, where you're thriving, working on your unique super genius breakthrough, and whatever kind of venture or enterprise or industry that's involved in, or you're getting the proper support. And if you want to build these components again, that for others, that's what you could be involved in. So these are some of the aspects here, right? Superhuman enhancements, live stream on Mondays, superhuman co-op meeting right after that. This is where the super civilization begins, with supporting youth development, child and youth development, and adult development as best we can, so we can unlock the superhuman power that is within us. And then we have super society advancements on Wednesdays with the super society co-op meeting. After that, this is our working group meeting, where we are creating what's going to become the super society co-op. And this is where the super civilization is really going to unify by helping people build their personal networks and developing our global digital network and our local physical networks. And this will allow us to unlock our super society power. And then finally, we have the super genius breakthroughs, which is the live stream on Fridays. And then following that, the super genius co-op 2-hour Zoom meeting working group. And this is where the super civilization is really going to thrive, where we continuously innovate new growth engines, improve the growth engines we already have right now, and manage the next growth engines. This is where we can really fully unlock the super genius power. And there's sort of a beginner, intermediate, advanced flow here, if you were picking up what I was putting down earlier, where if you're just getting your footing in personal development, you don't, it's the core of everything, human development. But it's not the broadest awareness. You really need to break into serving society as well, which gives you a broader awareness. And if you can get your footing in that, then you can really push into 7D, 8D, 9D and have the broadest possible awareness. And it's not that you only exist in like the ninth dimension. You have to be able to exist in all of these. But if you don't have your foundation, you can't really push into the greater dimensions of awareness. So it's sort of a beginner, intermediate, advanced level here. And you can either do it or you can't. A lot of this stuff is characterized by your levels of income and impact and net worth and these kind of things. So people that have the higher levels of income and impact and net worth, they tend to be at these higher dimensions and be at the top of their game in terms of being super achievers who are really truly working on super genius breakthroughs. So that's really all we have time for today. I'll come back to some of this stuff later and tie it back in. We have more live streams coming up this week. We're going to jump now to the meeting that follows this related to the super puzzle. And maybe in the future, we'll see you in that meeting. Thanks for being here with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.